Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. Both Jessa and I just wanted to put a brief disclaimer out that we are exploring topics of mental health, such as anxiety and depression, in this episode, and want to reiterate that even though we come off so wise and intelligent and brilliant, that we are not doctors. We are not medical professionals. While we want to have an open conversation about how we've personally experienced both positive and negative moments with mental health, and have a larger conversation about why our society and culture struggles with mental health more than ever, we also want to encourage anyone who is listening to take care of themselves. If this feels like a triggering topic, we will see you next week. If you are currently struggling with your mental health, reach out to your loved ones, your friends, and medical professionals like therapists or psychiatrists, or even Eastern practitioners that are certified in mental health treatments. This episode is for anyone who is interested in having an explorative conversation about mental health, and it is not intended to give medical advice.
If we're talking about environmental factors or social factors that could potentially be causing depression and anxiety, it's the people around you.
Yes.
If the people around you can regulate you into stability and equilibrium and balance and joy, they can also dysregulate you into depression and anxiety. And a lot of times,
the lack of people as well. We live in the loneliest society in human history.
yes, whether that's stressful relationships, family dynamics, friendship drama, I think that that's a huge, huge factor in people feeling alone, even with the people around them, purposeless, targeted.
Well, because all of these things create your self-narrative.
For those who are deep enough to get it,
But profound enough to not care.
you're listening to Consciously Unconscious.
My notes app will be like some crazy quote about existence and consciousness, and then the next note will be like beans.
We need to talk about that,
Beans
actually.
and peas.
Yeah, a grocery list.
You know what we should do? We should just read through some of our notes right now.
Should we read through our latest notes? I'm kind of manic, though. Like, I pull up my notes app probably 5 times a day to write things in it.
This one just says couscous, chop, arugula.
The most recent one, was a poem that I just wrote last night.
Oh, nice. Do you want to read it to us?
I see planets and people, stars in the freckles of their skin,
Oh, God.
dropped in the ocean of societal norms, desperate to play mermaids.
This is crazy. I do love it.
I actually finished it and put it on Substack this morning, but that was
nice. You've been crushing Substack.
Thank you. I'm really in my writing era.
This
Write about Easter, getting in touch with feminine, and dancing, and Lucas getting high and helping me learn to twerk.
Oh, I just have. Oh my gosh! This was Friendsgiving. Amanda carrots. That was your vote for best dish. Many countries, many lovers. It's gonna be one of my books.
Love. I'm obsessed with that title. That's so good.
Many countries, many lovers. Trademark. Don't you dare fucking take it. Learn how to DJ.
You should.
I know. I bought a DJ deck months ago.
The Age of Aquarius. Collective individualism. Radical expression. Chaos.
Chaos. The music reached the inside of old screws holding the doors together.
Oh, wait. Say that one again?
The music reached the inside of old screws holding the doors together.
Love that. Love that.
Thank you.
You should extrapolate on that.
Yeah, I should write a few more things.
Woodrow Wilson Academy.
What's that? Who's Woodrow Wilson?
Sounds like
That's
a president.
marbles in your mouth. Woodrow Wilson. Right?
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson. All right. Welcome back
Hi,
to
guys.
Consciously Unconscious news segment. What's in my notes app?
What's in my notes app?
I read that with like the most monotone voice I could ever read. I'm on a little bit of a lull.
You're struggle busting a little bit.
A little bit. I landed last night at 3 a.m. I got delayed in Houston for 5 hours.
What was Houston like? That's where Beyonce's from.
I don't like Beyonce.
H-Town.
I do not care for Beyonce.
I do not care for Beyonce. Why?
All weekend, I was speaking in my accent. I was playing the game of being a Southerner in Greenville, South Carolina. I was there for a wedding. Super fun. It was my childhood best friend getting married. I was the maid of honor, the Mo. And all weekend, I was this. I was meant to be in the South.
You were your alter ego, Mo.
Yeah, you can call me Mo. Mo only drinks gin and tonics.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And maybe a dirty martini here and there to start the night out. You want to know something? I went up to the bartender at the wedding. I said, can I have an extra dirty martini? And he looked me in the eyes and he said, we can't make that. And I said, what do you mean? This is a full bar. You don't have olive juice. I would have understood if you looked at me and you said, I don't have blue cheese stuffed olives. Like, that's fine. That's a little bit of a reach.
Vermouth spritz.
But you're for real telling me you don't have fucking olive juice?
Was it an open bar?
Yeah.
Love.
Sorry, you're cheap if you don't have an open bar.
If you don't have an open bar, I'm not attending your wedding. You think I have cash on me? It was super fun,
though. Yeah, no. It was super fun, but I'm feeling it.
Did you give your speech in the accent?
I should have.
You should have. It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, gets better with alcohol.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I did give my speech. What I was telling Amanda right before we came on the mic, every time we see each other, we want to catch up and then we have to be like, shh, shh, shh. Let's get on the mic. Shh, shh. I was so confident giving my speech this time around. I've given many speeches, funerals, weddings. I just find myself in those scenarios and I'm always really nervous. Like, I get nervous and I was nervy, but I was like, I've been on a mic week after week after week.
Mm-hmm. So it just rolled off the tongue.
It did, and I didn't even cry.
Now, did you write your speech and read it, or did you memorize it?
No, I didn't memorize it. I wrote, and then I was kind of off the cuff, throughout.
Yeah.
I would reference it and then say some things. And I was perfectly in that pocket of I am drunk enough to be off the cuff and be funny. But if I have a couple more drinks, I'm going to start saying things that I shouldn't. That's not appropriate for a room of 150 people,
slurring.
And slurring and, getting into the deeply uncontrolled emotions.
Yeah. I
was in the perfect window. And I told everyone that too. That was how I opened my speech. I said, listen, you caught me at the right time.
So what is that threshold for you? What does that look like?
In terms of the amount of drinks?
Yep.
Well, weddings are tough because you just
drink all the time.
And I'm not I'm just not a drinker.
Yeah.
And so I am quick to feel my alcohol. But I'm also what are we not going to have mimosas in the morning?
Yeah,
are we
not to. It's a celebration.
Yeah. And loosen me up before, wedding party pictures. Mm-hmm. Loosen me up before I had to walk by myself down the aisle, which I was a little nervous about because I didn't get my dress hemmed. And it was, 5 inches too long. And so I had to fashion tape it up underneath, but it was still too long. And I was I don't even have arm in arm someone to support me right now. I'm going to trip down the aisle.
Did you change?
No.
Oh, that would have tripped me out the entire time. I would have not stopped thinking about that.
What?
The fact that my dress is fashion shaped and it can come down at any minute. Was it secure?
No, not particularly.
That would have bothered the fuck out of me.
And I had to walk down the aisle by myself to get to the front of
slowly.
The space.
People were like, all right.
Yeah. I was
you need a hand.
So I was I need to have, a couple drinks before I do that, obviously. So my threshold is probably, I would say by the time I got to my speech, it was 8 p.m. It was interesting because they did speeches after dinner. I know.
So you couldn't even, could you even eat? Because you were probably nervous. You're anticipating it.
I was just waiting the whole time, really, before I could truly let loose. It was a good transition to dancing afterwards, the 2 speeches, and then they passed out champagne.
Hors d'oeuvres and champagne.
And it was the toast, and then it was okay, be free, go dance. But yeah, I probably by then I would have had 15 drinks.
Stop.
All day.
Double digits?
Easily, dude.
No.
Easily, because if I think about it, I drank a couple glasses of champagne in the morning. Then I drank a couple White Claws before the aisle.
Okay, we're at 4.
And then I drank like a lot by 8 p.m. I mean,
pushing 10.
anyways, I don't need to discuss my alcoholic tendencies too much further. But it was a really fun wedding. It was in South Carolina. I'd never been to South Carolina.
Congrats to the
lovely couple, SJ and David. It's so crazy to see your childhood best friend get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was an emotional wreck because I'm just so damn sentimental.
I don't care whose wedding I'm at. I will bawl my eyes out. Same with funerals, like anything that is emotional, sentimental, celebration of like a big life event, I will bawl my eyes out. I don't care who it is.
Well, that's what I said in my speech. I said, as we age, we celebrate milestones.
Yeah.
It starts as first birthdays, then we go into sporting events, then we go into graduations, jobs, and now we're celebrating like a massive life event.
Yeah.
Which is such a representation of being deeply human, is to celebrate this milestone of love, which is like, I don't know, just crazy.
Are you writing your speech down on your notes app?
Yeah, I wrote it on the plane there. When you have nothing else to think about.
Girly.
Well, yeah, I had to drop in.
You had to lock in.
No texts, no nothing but sentimental music in my headphones and writing down while I'm looking over the clouds.
Yeah. You have any tips for people writing speeches? Because I think that's so... If I'm going to a wedding, that's what I'm looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to the vows. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the speeches from your grandpappy and your mima and your uncle and your dad and your cousin and your best friend from college. Like, that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah.
So you better show the fuck out.
Here's my formula is... Obviously, like if you're giving a speech, you're an important person to one of the people getting married. So make it personal to how you know that person, why you know that person. So like tell a couple anecdotal stories about, you know, how you go way back, some funny things that you remember. I basically was like, this is what made me fall in love with SJ when I first met her, spoke highly of her, and then related it to her partner. Because you got to touch on the partner. You got to touch on the fact that, like, you know, so when she came home and told me that she had met David, I knew he was a good pick, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Talk a little bit about him. And then you talk about their union and them together, but in a general way where it's just like, you know, your relationships to other people are the depth of your relationship to yourself. So continue learning about yourself. Like you kind of like offer them advice, but you also talk generally about how happy we all are in the room that you're together.
Yes.
And then you can kind of finish with just like general life experience. Like I was saying, like, you know, here we are. It's crazy that we're celebrating this milestone, like weddings and marriage and this and that. And so like, I would say personal, union, general.
I love that.
But just like speak from your heart. Doesn't matter.
You know what's interesting though is I think that it is really nerve-wracking because I mean I can get on a mic all day long or I can go on somebody else's podcast and I'm not really nervous, but like it's interesting speaking to a room of people who are expecting to feel some type of way from this speech. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're expecting to either laugh or cry or...
Good ones make people do both.
Exactly. And I was actually blown away because my brother recently gave a speech to his best friend. Like he was the best man in his best friend's wedding and gave a speech, memorized the entire fucking thing.
Yeah.
And it was phenom. And I was like, okay.
Phenom.
I don't know if I could do that.
You know, I really thought about, not to make it about me, but I really thought about the fact this would be perfect practice to go up there and have nothing written and just be off the cuff. And just see what comes out because that's what we do here.
True.
And I always have something to say. Well, what did you do this weekend? I was at a wedding giving words of affirmation.
I was at a country club being judged.
Oh, sounds right.
Right. Yeah. My parents are members at this country club in Denver and it was Easter weekend. So, I mean, free brunch, free alcohol.
Well, it's not free.
It is free for me.
For you.
Yeah.
But your parents pay thousands of dollars a month.
Right. But like for me and Lucas,
they package it as free, unlimited brunch and drinks, and it's like that's a psychological.
It's not coming from my wallet. But no, we had a beautiful brunch. We had a lot of great Aperol spritz. The kids had an Easter egg hunt, which was so fucking cute because they say, okay, there are 8 golden eggs you have to find the golden egg and then you can come over here and get a prize. And then there was also other
free prizes.
yeah, free. And the kids were just eating that shit up. Like it was interesting to see the different tactics come out of my kids. So Lennox is like, oh, golden egg, I got a prize. I'm going straight for the golden eggs. Fuck these pink ones. Fuck these blue ones. I'm not even going for them. And so he gets the golden egg and he's like running over. I'm like, well, dude, get the other ones too. Like you can get candy, all the things. And then Ellis, on the other hand, he found the golden egg, but he's like, I'm going to load up. I'm going to load up. So his bag was filled to the brim.
That makes sense to me.
And it's interesting because in those situations, it's just, I feel kind of Lorelai Gilmore in a way. But you don't know this reference, but I'll explain it because people listening kind of will. Where she comes from like a country club family, and she kind of is the antithesis of that. Like doesn't believe in a lot of like the same values. Mm-hmm. I feel similarly.
What are those values? Hierarchy, power, and prestige.
Yeah, and like entitlement.
Yeah.
And non-diversity. The lack of diversity was astounding. And I've always known that, but it's wild to be in a position now where I've done so much like self-reflection, self-exploration, value work on my own. And again, there's nothing to dog. I don't want to like dog people's like way of living, because there is a really real part of country clubs that is community, and it is belongingness, and it is networking, and it's all of those things, right? However, it's just like so deeply misaligned with my values.
Yeah.
And it's such a catch-22 because I'm like, I don't want to raise my kids in this, yet I do want to expose them to this. And it's also like
for the contrast.
For the contrast, yes. For the contrast 100%, to know that like this exists.
Did they dress someone up in an Easter bunny costume?
Yes, and my kids went right to it.
Did you see who was under the Easter bunny costume?
No, I tried to look in the eyes, but honestly, I was a little afraid to look.
I'd be interested if that was a diversity hire.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure. And I think that that's the only thing that like gives me the ick with country clubs sometimes, is it's like very above energy.
You know what I am above?
Huh?
The Easter bunny.
Really? Why?
I never liked him.
Because you were a Santa diehard.
I was a Santa diehard, and I just didn't think it was plausible to have a large 7-foot bunny hopping around delivering eggs. It just was never a real thing. Every year, my mom would hide the Easter basket in the same place. What do you mean hide the Easter basket? You never had to like look for your Easter basket?
No, we did an egg hunt, but we never looked for the Easter basket.
Oh, my mom would hide the Easter basket.
Cute, but she hid it in the same spot?
Well, towards the end, I think she was just like, I'm going to put it in the cereal cabinet every time. And I just always knew it was my mother. I never even had a thought of the Easter bunny did this. Easter, I mean, like bunnies don't even lay eggs. Nothing makes sense.
You're so right.
Like, what do you?
Why did we choose the Easter bunny? To represent like spring and spring equinox? And
I suppose so, but where do the eggs come in?
True. I'm in a drinking era.
Tell us about it.
I just feel like I am in a season of my life where I'm not saying no to a drink.
That's so interesting, because I just texted Zeus and said, after this wedding, and said, I'm not drinking until you're up.
Yeah, and I feel that. But I just feel spring has sprung. The sun is out.
Does this happen to you every year when the weather corresponds with like vibes? Like it gets warm and you're like, I'm unstoppable.
It could be a pattern. It could be a pattern. I don't know. I think that I am so in a having a good time phase. And it's just about like being more my playful, being more my presence versus being in my like structure and routine and masculine.
I love that for
I'm
you.
enjoying a drink.
I love, a second wind, a resurgence in your late 20s of a little party dance girl.
Right?
Yeah, that's going to be me this summer.
Yeah.
And I will fully say no to nothing this summer.
Dancing too. I'm really into dancing right now.
I did see your reconnecting with my divine feminine video. And if you haven't seen it, go comment, like, and subscribe on it.
So I posted that and Lucas is like, are you going to do that again tonight? Like, are you going to dance again tonight? And I was like, don't fucking make fun of me. I am in my flow. I'm in my feminine. I'm getting into my body. It's making me feel empowered. It's making me feel loose.
Sis, I love that for you.
I have a goal of getting my split back, and I'm not stopping until I've achieved it.
And she says she doesn't want to be in her masculine. And I'm not stopping until I achieve my goal.
But seriously, I think that dancing is something that I grew up as a dancer until I became a cheerleader and then I became a volleyball player. And I stopped dancing after I was done with it for
bring back dancing.
Bring back dancing, because it doesn't have to be so serious. I just feel so in my like self-love when I'm moving my body.
Lean in.
Okay. So the beverage of the week is a Purple Crush smoothie from a place I love in Denver called Nurture.
Purple Crush.
And the reason I picked it is because it has ashwagandha in it, which ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is an herb. It's like an Eastern herb. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it helps to alleviate anxiety. I also actually used it for a lot of different things when I was healing my hormones, but ashwagandha is just great for anxiety. I used to work at an acupuncture clinic in college, and we used to give out ashwagandha for people who suffered from severe stress, like not even really anxiety. It was really stress relieving. And so I don't know the actual scientific or like medical or biological reasons for that, but all you need to know is that it's good for anxiety.
There's a nervous system response to it.
Yeah.
Purple Quash.
I would love for you to sing, but I'm going to telepathy what I want you to sing and see if you can get it.
That has to do with the name Purple Crush?
No, has to do with the theme of today.
Okay. Anxiety, somebody's watching me.
I feel it quietly. It's trying to silence me. Anxiety.
Okay, Dochi.
Yes.
Nice. That was good. Okay. Purple Quash anxiety, Dochi. Thanks, Dochi. Thanks, Dochi anxiety. This is my second smoothie of the morning.
Dochi, you're going to shit your pants. Dochi's actually from my home state.
Oh, it's pretty good.
She's from the swamp.
Oh, it's got something weird in there, though.
What, like textured?
No, like...
There was a big glop of bee pollen and coconut flakes that dropped into one of these, so...
I think I got it.
It's roulette.
It is the bee pollen, I think. Okay. Well,
bee pollen's also really good. You know, and if I'm going to pull anything from my health coaching days, it's that nutrition also plays a really important part in your mental health.
Your microbiome.
Not to be that bitch, but seriously, when I experienced anxiety, it was directly correlated to my gut health and my hormone health. And
your gut is your second brain.
Your gut is your second brain, and your hormones and your gut are directly correlated as well.
100%.
And so there was a point in my life where, the second that I focused on my gut health, my anxiety went away. But I've always been way more prone to anxiety versus depression.
Interesting.
I'll never forget, and I think I've told the story before, but I'm going to tell it again. I'll never forget one time in 8th grade.
I know what you're going to say. Want me to tell it?
Sure.
That you told your mom that you were anxious. And she said, I don't raise anxious children.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally told my mom, I think I have social anxiety, because I was experiencing a lot of anxiety in 8th grade. And she's like, I don't raise kids with anxiety. Figure it out.
How does anxiety feel in your body, though?
Fight or flight. Anxiety to me is literally I gotta go fate, like I gotta go feeling. I'm flight.
So it's flight.
I am so flight. Like I gotta get the fuck out of here. I gotta go hide. I gotta go somewhere. I can't be here. It feels really all consuming in a very sudden way. It doesn't come on gradually for me. It comes on all at once. And I think that there are other ways that it manifested as well, where it made me want to retreat. It made me want to hibernate. It affected my sleep. It affected my relationships. It affected my hormones. And I feel like I really discovered that a lot of where it was coming from in 8th grade was from being on a lot of antibiotics as a kid.
Yeah, because your gut is fucked up.
Yeah, because your gut, I mean, I think there's like some stat where taking one round of antibiotics wipes like 7 years of good bacteria out. Yeah. Which, like, if I was taking that at 4, 5, 6, I mean, I was on Z-Packs like they were candy. Like I was popping them like candy. And that's the other thing. I ate a fuck ton of candy as a kid. I was a candy girl. And so, yeah, my gut was just in shambles. And I remember that when I fixed that and then I got into college, it it was something that took a lot longer to heal. And I did heal it through a lot of acupuncture and a lot of herbal use. But at the same time, it deeply affected my relationships, deeply affected who I was, because I always identified as somebody who was so outgoing, so extroverted, so social, and so confident. And then to feel so not confident and think that I have anxiety and then identify with that anxiety and make it worse and worse and worse, I completely lost who I was for a really long time.
We're touching on a lot of things here. I think that I definitely want to get into the like identification conversation. The first thing that I want to get into, because I think it's an interesting distinction to make, is the polyvagal theory of your nervous system actually having 3 states. And so the one that you were identifying with your anxiety is your sympathetic nervous system. But then there's also dorsal and ventral. Has to do with your vagus nerve, which is your nerve that connects your brainstem to the rest of your body.
Yeah.
Not to the rest of your body. I don't know. I'm speaking in this like so not scientific, but your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. Your dorsal vagal is that depression, that like depressed state. And then your, did I say ventral?
Something with a V.
Ventral.
We'll call it ventral.
Ventral vagal is basically your parasympathetic, like when you feel safe and social and connected. So
your dorsal is what again?
let me see. Your dorsal vagal is your shutdown, your dissociation, your numbness, your depression. Your sympathetic is your fight or flight, which is your anxiety. And then your ventral vagal is feeling safe and connected and social. And so you were experiencing what sounds like your sympathetic dysregulation.
Yes.
Whereas for me, there was a period of time where I was experiencing like the shutdown, the dorsal vagal. And
can we talk about this? Because I don't think I've actually ever felt depressed in my life. Not once.
yeah, it's an interesting feeling.
Not once. So to me, I don't have any personal experience of how depression feels in the body.
It doesn't feel like anything.
It doesn't?
It's like, and this is,
It's like numbing.
it's so numbing. I struggled with depression, which at the time, maybe I wasn't even realizing that that's what I was struggling with. Other people were trying to tell me that that's what I was struggling with. It was anxiety and depression.
Which, is that helpful or not helpful?
I guess it was helpful, but at the time it was kind of just like, okay, like you're telling me how I'm feeling, I guess, then I have no choice but to identify with that feeling. But it was my sophomore year in college. I had just left University of New Hampshire to come home because I was really struggling my freshman year. And then when I came home, I was like getting into smoking a lot of weed and partying and just like doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And at the time, it was almost like I wasn't necessarily identifying I'm depressed. I felt so subdued, so numb, so just like flatlined, where I didn't want to participate in the life around me. I didn't want...
You didn't want to like get up and do the day.
No, I mean, it's genuinely the feeling of like, there's no reason for me to get up right now. There's no reason for me to participate. There's no reason for me to taste, touch, feel, see. There's no reason for me to have conversations with people. Like, there's just no reason. I was never to the point where I was like, you know, there's no point for me to be here kind of vibe. But I just was so floating through the surface of life, just like, you know, trying to smoke and drink and party and do drugs to feel something. But I guess at the time I didn't even realize how severe and extreme it was and why I was doing those things. Like, this is all retrospective action of looking back and saying like, oh, that's why I was drinking and partying so much. Because if I wasn't, I was just kind of a shell of a human being. And so it was very clear for people around me who loved me to see that. And so my mom really was like, we need to get you in therapy. And I was just like, whatever, like, all right, put me in therapy. And I went to therapy, and I don't even remember like really what being in therapy was, but I just remember like every week being like, I've got nothing to say.
Was that the only time you've ever been in therapy?
No, I was in therapy after my really bad breakup after college.
Oh.
Yeah, because I was heartbroken.
Oh.
But I just remember being like, how is this person going to help me if I literally can't even provide them with anything.
Yeah.
Like I don't have anything to say. And somehow weekly, I always had fucking something to say.
Exactly.
And my therapist gave me, I forget what I was on, but I was on an antidepressant for a while. And that was crazy because I have always been someone who hates taking medication. Like even as a child, I hated taking Advil. Like I just was like, ooh, I do not need this.
Yeah.
I do not want to be on medication. I don't know how this is going to affect me. This is supposed to make me feel better. Like, and I would take it and it would make me throw up sometimes in the morning if I took it on an empty stomach. And then I was like not taking it regularly. And I just remember it being like, I felt so ashamed and so like,
which this is the problem with like over prescribing things, is because people who take it and genuinely need it, there's still this like stigma around it when it shouldn't be. But the problem is I've talked to so many people who have been on antidepressants and still are, and it's being handed out when it shouldn't sometimes.
Totally.
And I equate it to when I even decided to get on birth control.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe 2 questions were asked about why I wanted to get on it, and then they just prescribed it to me and I was on my merry way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think the issue lies not with medication. It's over prescribing the medication to people who don't need it.
And it's trying to generalize what everyone needs. Some people need medication, some people don't. Some people,
you know, what was so interesting too is I listened to this TED Talk, and this guy was on antidepressants for 13 years, and every single time he would take it, it would work for a little bit and then it would wear off. So then he'd up his dosage and up his dosage, and he got to like the highest dose he could ever be on, and like nothing was fucking working.
Yeah.
And he says, like, again, medication gives some relief to some people. However, a lot of people in the medical field are generalizing generalizing depression as a chemical imbalance in your brain, which can be true for some people. However, that's not the whole picture. And he's like, when you tell somebody that they just have a malfunction in their brain, it's not helpful.
Yes.
Because you're insinuating that something's just chemically inherently wrong with them, when there's not. For some people, there's not. And there are way more circumstances that leave them feeling depressed than not. He talks about how there's 9 different factors that contribute to depression, because he like went across the world and studied these and talked to doctors. There's 9 different factors that contribute to depression. And only two of them are biological, meaning something like chemically in your brain or like biologically with your gene expression. That's it.
Are one of those factors isolation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Loneliness, lack of purpose. We should look them up because I didn't write all of them down. But yeah, he's like, the problem is that he tells this amazing story about this rice farmer, because I think he went to Asia or somewhere. He went somewhere, and he tells a story about this rice farmer who was farming on like an old war fields where there were, what are those mines that blow up? You know what I'm talking about? Huh? Okay. Long story short, he got his leg blown off in the rice field that he was working in. Yeah. Long story short, he got his leg blown off in the rice field that he was working in.
Long story short, he's a paraplegic. And he's depressed about it.
And he's struggling so much to go back to work, obviously, because he's traumatized, right? And he's in his bed and nobody can get him out. And the doctors there say, oh yeah, we gave him an antidepressant. And he goes, oh, what did you give him? And what turns out that they gave him was, they sat with him, they listened to how he was feeling, realize that how he's feeling makes sense for what happened to him. I don't want to go back to the rice farm because that's where I got my leg blown off. It's traumatic and I'm feeling purposeless now. I have no purpose now. So they gave him a cow, because they figured if he can't go to the rice farm, maybe he can just become a dairy farmer.
Yeah, have a purpose to take care of the cow.
And he did. And all of his symptoms of depression went away.
And his leg grew back. And he did. And the legend has it that he's on 2 feet as we speak.
Yeah. Anyway.
But okay.
They gave him an antidepressant of a cow, and his depression went away in like 3 months or whatever. And they're saying that was an antidepressant, prescribing him a cow because it gave him purpose back.
Well, it's also an interesting conversation of like co-regulation.
Yeah.
And how animals and other humans can help you regulate your emotions. I think a lot of times, again, there's stigma around medication. There's stigma around like healing yourself and fixing yourself. And a lot of that fixing has in the past, maybe like before normalizing therapy, has been like, you need to make yourself feel better. You need to figure it out. You need to fix yourself. And what we're not recognizing, or maybe what we're just starting to recognize, what we can draw attention to, is the idea of co-regulation and how healing yourself and softening with yourself can come with the people that you spend time around and the things that you spend time around. So, I mean, even like service animals, therapy animals, like a cow can be that, is just the energetics of an animal being there for you as a way to regulate your emotions and your nervous system. I also think that a lot of times, if we're talking about environmental factors or social factors that could potentially be causing depression and anxiety, it's the people around you.
Yes.
If the people around you can regulate you into stability and equilibrium and balance and joy, they can also dysregulate you into depression and anxiety. And a lot of times,
the lack of people as well.
Yes. The lack of people and the quote unquote wrong people. Like a lot of people's anxiety comes from the direct influence of the behaviors of the people around them, whether that's stressful relationships, family dynamics, friendship drama. I think that that's a huge, huge factor in people feeling alone, even with the people around them, purposeless, targeted.
Well, because all of these things create your self-narrative.
Yeah.
And I think if you're constantly telling yourself, oh, my friends hate it when I do this, or I don't have this career and, I don't have my life figured out and I don't like this version of myself. Like if you're constantly like so anxious about the way you're presenting yourself or the way that you are, you are going to inherently change your self-narrative into this negative narrative that then will create and exacerbate the feelings of depression and anxiety.
Yeah. And neuroception is the idea that your body, consciously or unconsciously, most of the time unconsciously, is scanning your environments to see what's safe and what's not safe.
Yeah.
And if your environments are continually presenting as unsafe based on your relationship dynamics or based on your career or based on where you live or based on whatever it is, you're going to land in sympathetic or dorsal vagal states. Like, you don't even realize how unconsciously your body can take in your environment.
Yeah.
And so being really keen and attuned to your environment is a way to assess like the consequence of that. Why are you feeling suppressed or depressed or anxious? You can't just start to be like, well, why am I feeling this way? It's like, okay, well, what could potentially be around me that's making me feel that way?
Totally. And I think that we have to talk about the loneliness epidemic when we talk about this too, because we live in the loneliest society in human history. Human history, the loneliest society. We are no longer in tribes. And the guy in the TED Talk was also making a point that how did we exist for so long? How do we become superior animals in the animal kingdom? It's not because we're faster than a lion. It's not because we're stronger than a bear. It's because we have more people. Our superpower is our tribes.
I love that.
Are people who we band together and we can conquer anything with. And if you take a moment to think about who are my people, who's my community, who's my village, like, can you even count that on two hands? Like, can you even really, I mean, I even got a text message from a friend the other day being like, I know that I'm in a really good place in my life and I feel really good, but like, I just feel like there's no one in my life. There's no one in my life.
It's just this irony of these feelings being really isolating that are quote unquote these negative feelings. And we keep using depression, anxiety, but like grief and jealousy and fear and all of these things that are heavy. For whatever reason, sometimes we think those are such solitary experiences and we feel so alone and shameful and guilty that we feel these things.
Yeah.
Yet they're one of the most universal life experiences. And that, like, I'm in one of the best places in my life, but why do I feel so alone? I don't know.
It's so real.
Yeah.
It's so real. And that's why during the pandemic, that's why I was inspired to create the Pretty Naked community that I had. And it was this online community where I had virtual events. And one of the events was called Cultivating Connection Circles. And what I would do basically is have like 5 to 10 women get on this Zoom call, and we would meditate, do a journal prompt, and at the end, everyone would share. And like, not everyone had to share, but I kind of made everyone share, because I was like, you're fucking talking. You show up, talk, say something. And it was so life-giving.
Her arms were cut off. Her legs were cut off.
It was so life-giving, and I never felt lonely in that period of my life, which is so interesting, like how even virtually we can feel connected. However, I do believe in like the power of physical touch too. That's something that I realized was a tool in my anxiety belt, was physical touch. Whenever I would feel anxious, I needed physical touch. I needed a hug. I needed a cuddle. I needed something to like ground me.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
You make a great point, Amanda. Something that really helped me was perspective during my like loneliness bout and depressive bout. One of the things that healed me, which it will be no surprise to fucking anyone else, is that
Buddhism.
like basically I traveled to South America and I backpacked Patagonia for 3 weeks. And then I stayed at like, whatever, that's a different story for a different day. But the point was perspective of how small my problems were in the world, and not necessarily how small they are, because they're all relative. But I was able to put myself in perspective of like how many other simultaneous experiences were happening alongside mine. Because when you're in a depressive and an anxious state, you really feel like you are like, oh, the only one experiencing it.
It's a prison of your own design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so getting out, seeing the world, seeing the way that other people lived, listening to different languages, eating different food, being on this crazy like backpacking trip where I was literally in the Patagonia mountains with no phone, no nothing, taking shits in the wood, living out of a backpack, sleeping under the stars. I was like, am I depressed? Like what the fuck is this? What is this? And
that's another one of the factors, of the 9 factors, is being out of touch with the natural world.
Yes, because it brings you back into your humanness. And you joke that like Buddhism, like our last episode brought me back to it. But I think one of the biggest principles that I started to learn, that I really started to pocket during that trip, that I swear to God, like healed my depression, was that everything is impermanent. Everything is impermanent. And that is a Buddhist principle, but that's also just a life principle. Like, what if we start looking at these concepts of emotions and mental health as impermanent, as clouds passing in the sky, as everything just coming and going? It's weather. It's some days you're clear, some days you're cloudy, some days you're sunny, some days it's rainy. And like, that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't have to be a clear day every single day. Yes. Some days you have 1 leg, some days you have 2 legs.
Some days you have a cow, sometimes you're in the rice field.
Right.
You know, we talk about in the last episode that like we are outside of our roles. Like we are not just our roles.
Yeah.
However, I do feel like our roles are deeply connective and deeply purposeful. And if we don't have any roles, if we are not in community, if we are not getting out of our own shit and getting into other people's and being of service, like that's why you hear so many stories of like people doing group therapy. My mouth just froze. Group therapy, or even volunteer work, and getting so much purpose from it, because you're almost healing your own wounds by helping other people heal.
Yes. One of the things that we did, so it was 2 weeks of backpacking and 1 week of service. It was insane. It was the Outward Bound trip that I talked about on my travel episode. And we stayed at this completely isolated and remote house of this couple that was probably 70 years old. And we tore down all their fences. We rebuilt their fences. We cleared paths to waterfalls. We ate in their tiny little dining room and they cooked for us. I mean, it was just like exactly that moment of purpose and service that I don't think I was feeling. I came home from school. I quote unquote failed at college. I didn't have a major. I couldn't decide. I was failing my classes. I didn't have anything to do. All my friends were 21, so I couldn't go out with them. So I was super isolated and I was super lacking purpose. And that gave me purpose. That gave me something to put my mind to and accomplish. And it gave me a role to play. And not that everyone needs to take a trip across the world to find that, but that was my personal experience. I decided after that trip that, oh my God, when I left New Hampshire, that had nothing to do with the finger that I was pointing at everyone else. This university is hard. I can't find friends. Everyone's mean, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh God, it was me. I was the problem. So I went back. My junior year to UNH, and I would not have done that if I wasn't able to kind of overcome that like self-victimization and this perception as reality of like everything is happening to me versus for me.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote that I like. I'm going to link the TED Talk that I watched because a lot of where I'm getting this information is from that.
Yeah.
And he says, actually, I think the World Health Organization says this. It says, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, you're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not a machine with broken parts. You're a human being with unmet needs.
Oh.
And I think if we even talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Getting into the, once you have your safety, your security, your shelter, your food, your water, you have psychological needs.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are belongingness, purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that now more than ever, we are just so lacking that. What do you think about therapy?
I love the concept of therapy because I think it's an unbiased mirror. I think it's a really great place to just like articulate and talk out emotions that you've never really been able to think about in the confines of your own mind before. That's how I felt. It was like, well, I have nothing to think about and I have nothing to say. And what the fuck am I even going to say to my therapist? And then every week I would have something to say that sometimes I would kind of in the moment be like, well, it was the first time I thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I think a good therapist asks you the right questions and makes you do the work versus provides you with, this is what you need to do to heal. I think that there are all different types of therapy that I'm not even keen to, whether that be talk therapy, art therapy, kind of like focused, more intense psychiatric and psychological practices.
Ketamine therapy is huge right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole episode is alternative therapies and utilizing alternative therapy. We'll leave it at that because I don't think we should get into that today, but we will. And maybe we can have an expert come talk to us about that. But I think that, again, there's no right prescription of medication or therapy or like steps for every single person to take. But I do find that therapy can be really beneficial if you're not looking at it as the thing that's going to heal you. You are the thing that's going to heal you. And your therapist is really just like a tool in that recognition of self-awareness. And a good therapist is a mirror.
Yeah. I love that you talked about the alternative ways of therapy because I think talk therapy can be a big turnoff for people. And it can also be the wrong solution for people.
Yeah.
I think that if you are highly aware and if you are constantly overthinking, I don't know that talk therapy is the best thing for you because I'm sure you've been thinking about everything that you're saying in this therapy session. And from my experience with talk therapy, I found myself just going over and over and over and over and over things without actually taking action on whether or not to heal them. And again, that speaks to having a really good therapist. I finally found a really good therapist the last time I was in therapy, and I really loved her. Maybe I should go back to her. But I think that there's something to be said for like getting in your body, getting outside of your mind, because I think sometimes we can over intellectualize our feelings, overthink the things that we're mulling over in our anxiety and start to identify with these things. And like the identification of things like anxiety and depression when it's not a chemical imbalance, I think is really detrimental.
Whatever the reason, it's really detrimental to say I am depressed.
Yes.
Versus I'm experiencing depression. And I think that's another God, there's so many nuances to this conversation. But I think that, yeah, like you said, the over-identification, like identification helps people, right? Sometimes like getting a diagnosis is really calming to people, that they can finally understand why they've been experiencing certain things. For example, like an autism diagnosis to someone with high functioning autism can really help them understand, okay, this is why I'm highly sensitive. This is why I'm overstimulated. This is why X, Y, and Z. It makes sense. And now I can kind of sit with that a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of benefits to getting a diagnosis from someone outside of yourself. Do I also think that, yes, the over-identification is a problem where then it's self-perpetuation of a certain diagnosis? Absolutely. And then you end up subconsciously playing into those behaviors that you see yourself as now.
Well, they become self-limiting beliefs. There's something interesting that I learned when I was doing Dharma coaching was like the lower brain versus the higher brain, and how your higher brain wants you to thrive. That is the place where your highest self lives, where, you know, you are thinking intuitively, you're making clear decisions, you're genuinely wanting to thrive. You feel safe enough to thrive. And then your lower brain, which is like the egoic brain, which is very much built to survive.
Yeah.
Built to survive. So if you are operating out of this lens of I am depressed and I am anxious, your lower brain is going to kick into overdrive and only find situations that satisfy that belief. Versus not attaching to it, not identifying with the I am anxious and just being, I'm experiencing anxiety right now. What would my higher brain do to help me through this moment of anxiety and depression? Versus, again, the lower brain satisfying that reality for you.
Yeah, and I think the idea of putting these emotions, depression, anxiety, in these categories, these labels of this is bad, I should not be feeling this, should, is also what really hinders the ability to move beyond it. If we start to normalize the fact that every single human on planet Earth exists in lower vibratory states of depression, anxiety, grief, fear, jealousy, blah, 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 then it becomes a little bit less serious. It becomes a little bit less like, oh God, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I need to move beyond it.
Here is the thing. When I was coaching, the way that I would measure people's growth was using this like circle of life wheel, because I was a holistic health coach and I was working with people on like nutrition and fitness, but also mindset. And a lot of people's goals would be to lose weight or like to get healthier or whatever. But I'm not someone that wants to measure that growth from a scale. I want to measure it holistically. And so what I would do is in the beginning of our coaching programs, which was like 4 months, I would give them this circle of life wheel that has like creativity, relationships, sleep, gut health.
Thank you, IIN.
Yeah, all of these things. I kind of made it my own though. I added a few things because I think that one leaves out a lot. And it's basically on a scale from 1 to 10, how good do you feel in these areas? And by good, how fulfilled? How fulfilled, how inspired, how do you feel in these areas? And I think everyone should do it as like an audit to themselves, because almost always, no, definitely always, I'm going to toot my own horn. After working with people, their charts would be astronomically different. Like they would go from having a 5 in creativity to an 8, or like a 2 in community and relationships to a 6. And that's the point. I think that this chart can help you measure your growth and kind of just see where you're at and maybe pinpoint the factors of your life that you're lacking that could be contributing to these feelings of anxiety and depression. And I think that that's a great tangible tool to use instead of just trying to figure out what it possibly could be.
How do you think social media is impacting our generation in terms of negative thoughts about oneself? Yeah, did I just open a can of worms?
You just opened a can of worms, because I think that there's a conscious side of it and a subconscious side of it. There is so much that we are seeing and so many subconscious feelings of comparison that are happening that we don't even know about that are contributing to the way that we feel. And then there's also a conscious side of it of all of these people are doing cool things. What am I doing? I think the biggest thing that I have experienced with social media and anxiety and depression is almost this like false sense of productivity where I feel like I'm being productive. I feel like I'm connecting with people. I feel like I'm in community because I'm seeing everybody in what they're doing, but I'm actually not. And so once I disconnect from it, it's almost like this anxious attachment of like, oh, I kind of got my social fix, or I kind of got my inspiration. Oh, I kind of got all these things. And then I'm back in my home by myself. And I'm now feeling like there was like a withdrawal of like, oh, I just got ripped away from these feelings of belongingness for some reason, even though it wasn't there to begin with. So it's like this false reality that is created. And I just think that it's super detrimental when we're being raised to spend so much time there.
Yeah. Well, because it opens up the whole door to a really big reason why people feel insufficient is comparison. I'm like stimming right now. I'm like rocking back and forth. I also have to pee really badly.
We can wrap up soon.
But I think I literally didn't even notice that I was stimming until you just.
Is that what it's called, stimming?
That's what autistic people do.
Oh.
And me, apparently. Yeah. Which, put two and two together, what's that tell you? We are finding ourselves to be insufficient, which leads to lack of purpose, which leads to shame, which leads to guilt, which leads to these feelings of like, I need to be better. And because I'm not as good as so-and-so, or because my life doesn't look like this, or because I don't have this much money, I'm depressed about it. I'm anxious about it. I'm anxious that I'm not worthy enough to exist in this world. I'm anxious that I am not contributing enough. I'm anxious that I'm not good enough in some way. And I'm depressed because I'm sitting around and like trying to...
It's literally like a virtual reality. You know the goggles that you put on and there's a virtual... Like the way that I feel about it, and I was trying to explain it, I don't know if I explained it well enough, where I feel like I'm doing something.
When you're on social media.
When I'm on social media. But then when I'm off of social media and I just spent like 2 hours mindlessly scrolling, I'm like... I could have been doing so much. I could have been writing. I could have been dancing. I could have been,
shoulda, coulda, woulda. You're just wiring your subconscious beliefs of what your life should look like, or how you should look, or what you should feel.
Which contributes to the feelings of anxiety and depression, versus if I just didn't fucking go on it at all and did those things, or didn't do those things, but wasn't reminded of the fact that I could have.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done, because I do believe that social media is airing a really beautiful side of people's vulnerabilities and people's mental health.
You're making me nauseous.
Sorry. I like really have to pee.
Okay. The last two things I really want to mention before we wrap up is talking about going back to our emotions episode. If we put it in the context of that, if we put anxiety and depression in the context of that, in that emotional frequency chart that we touched on with David Hawkins, was his name just sounds so fake. It's so funny. David Hawkins.
I know I said that in the middle of the episode and we were like,
yeah. But if you take these anxious feelings, right? If you identify it with them, like we were talking about, it's going to be really, really hard for you to accept that, because it's almost like you have to accept this version of yourself that you don't really want to be there, versus separating the self from the feeling and then just accepting the feeling. And once you accept the feeling, it's so much easier to move into these feelings of joy. And I think joy is really where you can eradicate a lot of this anxiety and depression, is doing things that spark joy.
We could have taken this so many different ways and we pinballed around, but the point being is that it's always a reminder to, again, stop shaming yourself for where you're at. There's no need to fix yourself. There's no need to be better. There's just a need to be kinder and softer to yourself. There's the concept of contrast being important and experiencing lows so that you can experience highs. There's a concept of putting yourself in positions that make you feel good. So doing things like being out in nature and moving your body and putting yourself around networks of people that make you feel good. And just the journey of self-awareness and the journey of healing comes with a lot of heaviness.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the one thing I want to leave people with is like, you have autonomy over the way that you feel. You're going to feel lows because, again, that's the contrast of life, like Jessa just said. However, I do believe that you have the power to do things in your life that make you feel good and that can help you with these feelings. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to your community, to reach out to your people to help you with these things. If anything, that is the key. That is the unlock to maybe a lot of the feelings that you're feeling, especially because we are such a lonely society. So reach out to your people, reach out to us if you need it.
Yeah.
And we love you.
Love you.
Capital L love.
Capital L. Love. Bitch.